And that's where you're getting the conflicting signals.
Now, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have been wrestling with this. As you say, 187 countries in the IMF. Is this an institution that's past its time? I mean, what good is it?
I think at the end of the day, it's a political answer, and a lot of the time politicians like to be seen to be doing something. Whether or not they're effective or not is really not the point. They like to be seen that they're actually doing something. And it's like in the States at the moment, you know, the Federal Reserve and the various politicians are pushing to do more about China, to do more to help their economy. Whether it'll work or not is another story. And the IMF, the debate still goes on as to whether it's effective or not.
What do you make of the Group of 20 now, James? They'll be meeting, I think, at the end of next week, October 22nd. And the French President, Sarkozy, is going to take over. He'll be the president. He is saying very openly that his big mission is to solve the global currency crisis. Your take on that?
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of different factors that are going on. Of course, in Europe, you've got the strong countries, the weak countries. They've got their own euro problems, I guess. Then you consider what's happening around the world, the euro against other currencies. You've got the Brazilians who are saying, well, you know, our Brazilian reals looking really strong against the US dollar right now. That's attracting a lot of capital, potential asset bubbles when we've got lots of capital coming in. Our exporters are not performing that well because the real is so high. So I think there's going to be a lot of currency issues around that, but you know I still think that there's a lot of basis to just have a floating currency, and the economy can work things out. From
your point of view, how is Europe looking at the moment?
Oh, I think the whole global economy is still looking pretty soft, and Europe's one of the key areas that is still continuing to look soft. There's a variety of different things that are happening. You've got the likes of Germany who are looking pretty good, but the other countries have got some issues, and we haven't really started to see the austerity measures and the really big budget cuts start to come through, such as that have been announced in the UK. So they haven't really started to impact on those economies just yet, and I think they're going to have a big impact down the track. So they're still pretty soft, and it's there's still a lot of the hammer's about to strike.
What should we be watching for now? How do we read the global financial economy? You know, ordinary people like us, what are the danger signs?
Well, I think the big problem is America. As I said, they're generating massive amounts of debt. And the problem that we've got is around the world, various governments, as you've commented, are actually doing things. America finds it really hard to look at the healthcare reform. It's taken them many, many years to make those changes. They've got gridlock in America, and we've got elections in 2 or 3 weeks, and that gridlock's only going to get worse. So as I see it, they're programmed to go over a cliff with their debt, and I think there's a crisis looming in America.
Yeah, and despite the billions of dollars of government stimulus now, Americans still aren't saving. Businesses aren't going out looking for loans.
It's tough to save when it's hard to make money. And you've got to be making profits to actually save. And a lot of American companies are really struggling. And at the state and government level, they're really struggling as well. So I see America, I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but Greece was a major problem, but a very small problem. America's problem is like that, and it's coming. It's coming in the years ahead, unless they do something.
Okay, let's bring it back on home to New Zealand. We now have dairy futures trading on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. Not a lot of activity so far, James.
Well, actually, over the past 24 hours, the first trade has occurred, which, you know...
That's taken a week?
Yeah, I mean, but it's, I'm surprised that it's happened probably so quickly. I think that's been quite a positive development, and there does seem to have been some interest around it. You know, it's probably not a lot of activity going on, but that's fairly general for those sorts of products around the globe, and you know, similar products that have been in Europe, then they have had very, very little activity. So the fact that, you know, there has been some trading happen here in New Zealand, that's good.
And in terms of the poultry sector, the word out now that Tegel could be sold by the end of the year, possibly to, let me get this right, a big South American or an Asian food company. How would that affect the industry here?
Well, I guess there's some concerns about what happens with the poultry sector here in New Zealand, and whether we can't actually bring in chicken from outside sort of New Zealand, Australia. So you know, they may not have a big impact on the actual chicken industry here, but I think the developments around the world that we have seen over the past few months, then you know, there really is some appetite for food-related businesses around the world. You know, we've seen the South American companies, the meat companies, really expand over the past sort of 2 years, and there has been a lot of other activity with, you know, the likes of Olam coming in, Bright Dairies, and that's just ramping up. I think that the story for food and the story for food agriculture is good, and that's I guess Tegel could potentially make the best out of that opportunity at the moment.
Derek, would you agree? Is the food export angle for us going to continue to be our savior, if you like, as we face this global crisis?
Well, in the long run, if we get a downtrend, Australia exports rocks and we export food. And at the end of the day, when you get a downturn, people still need to eat. So we're very lucky that we actually make a lot of products that people want. I worry, though, that the big problem we have is we don't have a strong saving industry. Companies like Tegel should be able to actually get New Zealand investment funds to actually invest in them. And we just don't have the savings capacity to do that. And the world is being divided up between borrowers and savers. And the savers are going to win. And so we need to get saving.
Thank you very much. Coming up, how you can get a slice of the action in thousands of Starbucks coffee shops around the world thanks to a clever Kiwi company. And they're drinking our wine here, 35% more, in fact. Where in the world are we talking about? But first, answer this. What's the hot new secret ingredient that will be blended with New Zealand wool to make upholstery material for Starbucks coffee shops around the world? The riddle is solved when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Money Talks. Just before the break, we asked you, what's the hot new secret ingredient that will be blended with New Zealand wool to make upholstery material for Starbucks coffee shops around the world? The answer, recycled coffee sacks. Wool Partners International is about to launch a new prospectus to raise money from farmers after a Wellington company called the Formery came up with a leading-edge fabric called Wojo that blends New Zealand wool with recycled coffee sacks, and it'll be used to reupholster the furnishings in 8,000 Starbucks stores. Is this the kind of Kiwi ingenuity we're going to need to survive the GFC, as Derek calls it, the global financial crisis, James?
Oh, I think it's great. Bringing new products into the mix for the wool sector, and that's where we've got to go. So it sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, they're going to start, I think, with something like 600,000 kgs of wool initially, but they think that can ramp up. Is there any downside to going this way?
I don't think so. I mean, wool, the way that I understand it, it's going to be a sustainable product. It's going to be recycling existing Starbucks sort of production that's going to be scrapped out. So, I think wool's a sustainable product. There's an appetite out there in the global marketplace at the higher end, which is important for New Zealand, that we are positioning ourselves at the higher end of the food and product chain. There is a desire to look at sustainable products. So I think it's good, and the more of these sorts of products is going to help out all sectors, but importantly for the wool sector. And
very timely, because WPI wants to launch Wool Partners Cooperative at the end of this month.
Yeah, well, so they're looking for a bit more money to get things going. So the release of these sorts of things, potentially might be a sign of new things to come. If it is, then I think that's going to be great.
And more good news, Derek. Apparently over in the UK, our wine sales are up. 35% more wine from here is being drunk by the Brits. Is it enough to save us?
Well, the wine industry's grown up enormously over the years, but the problem we've got, I think, is going to be demand in the UK as well, because their economy is not going well. But gee, it's a good sign. I mean, it's a good sign. The Australian wine has actually done very well in the UK over the years, so it's about time our wine caught up.
Yeah, apparently people aren't going out for those fancy restaurant meals anymore. They're going down to their local bottle shop and buying a bottle and taking it home. I wonder, overall, isn't that going to cost us? When you go to a restaurant, you tend to drink up large.
Yeah, well, I think if you're looking for New Zealand wine in the UK, it's actually been pretty hard over the years when I've been there. Mostly, it's been Australian wine that's sold in the restaurants. So I think it's great that we're actually seeing more of our wine over there, and it's about time, long overdue.
The question is, what currency should we be using now in New Zealand?
Well, I think the problem is the US dollar, and I think the big problem that exporters need to get their head around is that they're actually receiving their income in a currency that is increasingly going to be a problem in the years ahead. So once upon a time we used to do everything in sterling, and we gradually moved over to dollars. I think the world is going to move away from US dollars and move maybe to another currency, and maybe it'll be the euro. Maybe exporters need to start thinking about exporting in euros rather than in US dollars.
James, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a farming perspective, then farmers have got to get used to a high New Zealand dollar against the US, and probably for over the next year or so against all currencies, not the pound against the euro, against the US dollar, but we're going to stay higher against the US dollar probably for longer because of their inherent risks. There is some analysis being done around, say, whole milk powders and powders around the world in terms of some of our agricultural products, and the exchange rate between the euro and the US dollar does have an impact on what the price is. So there is some correlation around that, and I guess that's something to look out for.
So how is our economy here in New Zealand, Derek, doing when you look at it today? How are we doing?
I don't think it's going very well. I travel around the country quite a fair bit, and just talking to different companies, they are struggling out there. So I think we're flatlining is the best way to explain it. We're actually not going up strongly, we're not going down strongly, we're just puttering along.
So what's your best advice to farmers?
At the moment, I think the big problem is the currency. I think that 80 cents is actually a target. I think the Reserve Bank will need to have another look at intervention at some stage if we get up towards those levels.
And they have intervened before.
Yeah, back in 2007 they intervened, and they were selling New Zealand dollars at 76 cents. They were selling it all the way up to 80, and then we had the GFC, and the New Zealand dollar fell over. So the Reserve Bank made a lot of money out of that move. But they'll need another, if you like, collapse like that to generate more profits. So I would think that as we get towards 80, they'll be looking at doing something to try and slow down the New Zealand dollar strength against the US dollar. But again, like other countries, I think it's a losing battle.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks to my guests, ASB rural economist James Shortall and financial advisor and currency expert Derek Rankin. We'd love to hear your feedback, so drop me a line on the website, and remember to check out my weekly blog. We'll give the last word to Audi. Despite the recession, the German car maker is plowing $25 million into 9 showrooms in the next 3 years, and Auckland will be the chosen city with a $15 million makeover. Apparently, Audi is having a cracker year, and New Zealanders are snapping up the costly cars, especially owners of small to medium-sized businesses. Audi says people have been to hell and back. Time to party. Anyone for a road trip to ride out the recession? Keep the faith. See you next time.